Pobeda Peak is a steep and rugged mountain located in the Almaty region of the nation of Kyrgyzstan, right along its border with China. Standing at a height of 7,439 meters at its summit, Pobeda Peak and its sister peak, the 7,010 meter high Khan Tengri, tower above the 9-mile wide glacial valley that separates them. Notably, Pobeda Peak is the tallest mountain within the nation of Kyrgyzstan, and furthermore, is the world's northernmost 7,000 meter plus peak. Within the mountaineering community, Pobeda Peak is notorious for its difficulty and has long served as a proving grounds for particularly Russian mountaineers, as the conditions found on Pobeda Peak's sharply slanted slopes are challenging in all aspects of the word, as summit hopefuls must contend with steep and often technically difficult climbing for long stretches, the stakes of which are only compounded by the near constant sheer drop-offs of thousands of meters that can turn a single misstep into a lethal disaster. Furthermore, Pobeda Peak is known for its unrelentingly frigid weather, as the peak's thick, deeply frozen glacial flows are indicative of the weather surrounding the peak, as temperatures as low as -40 degrees have been recorded on Pobeda Peak during the summer months, and heavy snowfall is a near constant year-round. And thus, it should come as no surprise that Pobeda Peak is also home to some frighteningly powerful avalanches as well, as huge chunks of heavy ice from the peak's seracs break loose and tumble down its steep slopes, bringing enormous volumes of snow cascading down along with them. Due to all of these aforementioned hazards, Pobeda Peak has a very high fatality ratio, particularly with the fair few climbers that actually manage to reach its summit, as about 1/3 of climbers that have reached Pobeda Peak's summit lose their lives during their descents, and thus, while it is certainly less known to Western mountaineers than Annapurna or K2, Pobeda Peak is just as deadly and difficult as either, as lives are annually lost on Pobeda Peak slopes while attempting to overcome its numerous life-threatening obstacles in order to reach the top. In July of 2021, an experienced mountaineer and UK-based activist of Iranian origin, a woman named Mary Jafari, would gear up for an attempt at reaching Pobeda Peak's summit. She was an experienced climber in the region, as she had made a successful ascent of Pobeda Peak's sister peak, the 7,010 meter Khan Tengri, in 2008. Mary had originally intended to ascend Pobeda Peak solo. However, upon her arrival, she realized that such an attempt was far beyond her technical abilities, and so she instead opted to join another Iranian team, posting an update to her social media accounts on July 22nd that she was anticipating their arrival at base camp within the following few days. Just about a week after the arrival of the other Iranian climbers, on August 1st, 2021, Mary Jafari joined the Iranian team led by a climber named Saeed Mirzai, who was further accompanied by a man named Samad Babazaden Anari, a man named Bayazid Nibakht, and a man named Reza Adane, as they began their ascent of Pobeda Peak. Along with this Iranian expedition team, there were several further teams also making summit pushes of their own, including notably a Hungarian expedition team and a Russian team of climbers. Over the following few days, the Iranian team made good progress and had reached an altitude of 6,400 meters, the location of Camp 4, by the evening of August 3rd. The following day, on August 4th, the team began their push towards Camp 5, which is located at an altitude of 6,900 meters. During this stretch of climbing between Camps 4 and 5, the team made a call to base camp, where it was relayed to base camp that Mary Jafari was ascending at a significantly slower pace than the other climbers, and had complained of a hand injury, and thus base camp suggested that she abandon her attempt at the summit and retreat to one of the lower camps for the night. Mary heeded base camp's advice and began a solo descent as the rest of the team members trudged onwards and upwards without her. At approximately 4 p.m. that afternoon, as she was making her descent alone, Mary began to descend a steep ridge that hung above the Daiki Glacier at an approximate altitude of 6,300 meters, and while descending this steep ridge, she lost her balance and slipped, falling at least 100 meters as she tumbled into the crevassed Daiki Glacier below. The group of Hungarian climbers, who were about 100 meters away from Mary at the time of her fall, saw her disappear into the glacier, and after peering down at the glacier and noting no sign of her, they radioed base camp to inform them of her fall. Upon learning of Mary's disappearance, the team at base camp contacted the Iranian climbers and demanded that they turn back and search for her. However, unfortunately for Mary, the team outright refused to do so and shut their radios off for the remainder of August 4th. Mary's tragic and sudden death would mark the first fatality of several more yet to come on Pobeda Peak's steep slopes over the following few days. The next morning, on August 5th at 8 a.m., the Iranian team switched their radios back on and contacted base camp to inform them that Mary Jafari was missing. Stunned by their call, the team at base camp again ordered the team to turn back and search for her. However, clearly the team did not want to hear this, and again refused before shutting their radios off once more. Thus, base camp contacted local officials, who organized a helicopter search for the missing woman, which found no trace of her. At noon, the other 4 climbers of the Iranian expedition were spotted as well, continuing their ascent towards the summit, unbothered by the search unfolding on the slopes below them. The following day, on August 6th, one member of the Hungarian team that had seen Mary's fall, along with several other volunteer rescue mountaineers, were dispatched to search on foot for Mary Jafari at the location she was last seen, braving the frightening conditions of the site to search for her, but alas, she had been buried in the twisted mass of ice where they couldn't find her. As the Hungarian team member, a man named Albert Kovacs, described of their efforts, quote, "We were in an avalanche area under a 3,000 meter high wall. We were scared shitless the whole time. The glacier was constantly breaking under our feet, only the rope held us. But we did more than the entire Kyrgyz organization and the Iranian team that is sunbathing on the base. We arrived late. If they had come up for her yesterday, they would have been able to find her. Now, she is buried under the avalanche," he frustratedly recalled of their search efforts. Meanwhile, as these climbers searched for Mary, the Iranian summit team would leave their radios switched off in an act of willful ignorance to the surrounding mayhem as they reached Camp 6 at an altitude of 7,100 meters that evening. The following day, on August 7th, the Iranian team began their push for the summit. However, as the team ascended a steep ridge near the summit, one of the climbers, Reza Adane, slipped and skidded down the steep ridge, tumbling down the Chinese side of Pobeda Peak. A joint Ukrainian-Israeli team that had witnessed the fall descended about 60 meters following his trail, which they saw had made a line down the steep ridge for about 100 meters before plummeting off a huge cliffside, which they relayed to the surviving 3 members of the Iranian team that there was no way Reza could have survived such a fall. Following the news of Reza's death, the Iranian summit team remained unwavering in their objective of reaching the summit and continued onwards towards the summit without ever switching their radios back on to inform anyone of Reza's untimely death. At 2 p.m. that afternoon, the remaining 3 climbers reached the summit of Pobeda Peak and began their descent to base camp. The following day, on August 8, 2021, another distress call was relayed to base camp, this time from a team of Russian mountaineers who called for a rescue after becoming trapped at an altitude of approximately 7,000 meters. Upon receiving their request, a rescue party was dispatched to aid the stricken Russian climbers. However, while attempting these rescue efforts, a huge cornice broke loose beneath the feet of a man named Valentin Mikhailov, sending him plummeting several hundred meters to his death below, as was witnessed by several climbers alongside him at the scene of the rescue. Valentin's death would mark the final fatality on Pobeda Peak's unforgiving slopes that fateful early August, as the remaining members of the Iranian team, as well as the remaining members of the Russian and rescue teams, would manage to make their descents without further incident. Thank you all for watching.